I just want to start by letting you know that I understand we're all going through a tough time. I know it's hard for kids not being able to hang out with your friends, go to the movies, or go to the mall, or go to some great AAU programs that we offer. It's just as hard for parents to keep kids occupied and even to exercise. That's why we put together videos on our Albany County Cares YouTube channel so you don't get cabin fever and you know we can still connect, just a little differently. We'll keep adding more. Hang in there. We'll get through this, and remember, Albany County Cares.
I'm Mary Rozak with Dr. Stephen Giordano, the director of our Albany County Department of Mental Health, and this is a video that hopefully will help you cope if you're feeling under some stress, and it will also perhaps be something that you want to share with others. Welcome, Dr. Giordano.
Thank you very much.
So, the world is a completely different place in the last few weeks as we tape this than what we've ever known, and or what most of us have ever known. We aren't used to quarantines. We aren't used to really being told, stay home, stay out of school, don't work. You have that confinement, so to speak, right? Because most people may feel confined. And at the very same time, you have the threat, the possibility of getting something very scary or spreading something very scary called coronavirus. So I'm sure there are many people feeling anxious. And I know that we want to start first with the big picture and the emotional support mental health hotline. Yes. What are you hearing?
Well, as you say, we've created a mental health support line, and we're hearing from community members about just what you said, their worries and their anxieties and the stresses that they're experiencing. I think and we'll give the number out, by the way.
Yes, okay. Yes. And the number, as a matter of fact, should be on the screen.
Oh, great.
As we're
great.
talking.
Well, you identified two things that in and of themselves are hard to handle, but put together really make it exponentially harder. Being contained and confined against your choice in quarantine, for example, or social distancing, and uncertainty about a threat. You put those together, I dare say that it is normal now to feel anxious, worry, and stress. And I think that's important to just tell folks and encourage people to understand that they're having a normal reaction to an abnormal situation. Many people are not inclined to share their concerns and worries with other people because they think it's weak, or they think that they have to be strong, and I think it's just the opposite these days. A uncertain threat while having to change the daily routines of your life is a recipe for anxiety, worry, and stress, even for those who are not predisposed to that. And we treat a large number of folks with mental illness, and they're understandably going to have exacerbations in their conditions, but I think we're talking about them and the rest of the general population who go through their life every day not having to worry about things. Everyone's worrying about something today.
Well, let me ask you this, because people may not even realize that they're feeling anxiety, feeling anxious. What are maybe some of those kinds of symptoms? Is it increased irritability and?
Well, that's a big one. I think my whole career is committed to trying to help people get more in touch with themselves and their feelings, because in general that's healthy. In times like this, I think it's very healthy. And some of the things I think we'll talk about in a moment are trying to help people center and get back to what it is that's going on with them. But certainly disruptions in the way they're interacting with others, sleep disruptions, all kinds of things. But irritability is a big one, sure.
Well, let's talk about too when you're saying sleep interruptions. I mean, there are several things that we need to do to stay healthy, and I don't think people think about the sleep factor.
Yeah. It's a very good point. We were just downstairs at our press conference, and we were talking about the relationship of health to mental health and how it impacts, how mental health and emotional well-being impacts physical health. I think you immediately have to look at that interaction says what are the things that affect health. We know that sleep does, we know that eating does, and we know that exercise does. Those are all recipes for emotional well-being as well. And I would say that the top of the list is to try to take care of the basics, even though it's difficult. Sleeping and eating right and getting exercise are crucial to staying emotionally in balance.
Exercise is so very important, and I know that we have talked about, the county executive has talked about being able to get out but social distance, and being able to get out and take the hike. You made good reference in our press conference about being able to do some of the things we haven't been able to do, right?
Well, it strikes me as odd that we're all living these busy lives, and up until 10 days ago, everyone said they didn't have time to do anything. Now they have time to do everything, and I think if someone tells you they're bored, you really have to challenge them, because now's the time to do all those things that you were hoping to read those books, play the instruments, learn languages, but go outside. The world's still a beautiful place. Nature has healing properties. Take a walk, a lot. Go into nature. That is going to have immediate and lasting effects, I think, in terms of keeping us emotionally well balanced. I recommend it highly.
I made a suggestion in my family. It went over like a lead balloon, going out and raking the yard. It's a good time to get that started. I was told a few weeks from now would be a good time.
Yeah,
so
you're trying to get some work out of it.
I think there's a place for that. But we are living in a very different world, and so lessening that anxiety. There are those ways. Are there other ways that we can lessen our anxiety?
Well, a couple of things I think is worth highlighting. In a time when you're feeling that you're more and more out of control, or there are less things in your control, I think it's time to take stock of what can you take control of. And I think on a daily basis, especially with time on one's hands, you can start to develop routines and even family rituals, and make plans for the things in your life that you can follow and feel like you're in control of. It's very important at a time when everything is feeling out of control. Much of what we're experiencing now we can control, though, and that's where I get into talking about, in those instances, learning ways to manage your emotions is crucial. And certainly getting in touch with them first, and knowing what you're feeling, accepting that anxiety and worry and stress is not a sign of abnormality today. It is actually the new normal. And then again, I mentioned a few things this morning. I'd like to just highlight again, thank God for the media. They keep us up to date, but my goodness, we have to pace ourselves. We can't, I'm a news junkie. I have paced myself because it is not in our best interest to watch CNN all day. Facts fight fear. I heard that phrase. I agree with that. Maybe once or twice a day. You really need to understand the input that goes into your mind and body is going to affect you. So I would say pace yourself with media exposure. The exercise, the health, the diet, and the sleep certainly. But dealing with anxiety, I love meditation, and we talked about maybe we could do another video after this about some of the specifics, but I encourage people all the time, and now especially, there are self-help applications on the phone, on the computer. Meditation helps through breathing to calm the mind and the body. And it's not a trick, and it's not something to look lightly upon. If our minds are stuck on the future, we're always going to feel anxiety. If our minds are stuck in the past, we're always going to have regret and sometimes even depression. Meditation simply helps you focus on this moment, because we forget about this moment so often. And in times like this, again, I said this morning, the world's still a beautiful place, and we shouldn't overlook that. But we can't miss it. We'll miss it if we're wrapped in fear or in regret or depression. And so I think that's something people can do right now. And there's many free applications online, on phones, and we can think about doing something here even to demonstrate some techniques. But those are age-old, non-pharmaceutical, ways to calm yourself. If you haven't learned to do that already, this is a great time because you have time.
Okay, so there may be people out there, including myself, who've never done any type of meditation.
Yep.
Okay, so you got to know the type A personality that I am. I'm going to ask this question.
Right.
So you meditate, you're done. How long does that last? Like, is there?
Well, there's a funny
time limit?
Right. There's a funny thing that I've heard about people who say, "Well, I don't have time to meditate," and the answer is, well, you're exactly the person who should learn how to do it. It's cumulative. It certainly helps in the moment, but as with anything else, it's about awareness of yourself and your surroundings and what's going on in your life right now, not what you're fearing, not what you're regretting. And it's like any other muscle. It's like going to the gym. The more you go to the gym, you get strong. The more you meditate, the longer it'll last. But you got to start.
Okay, all right. So maybe we'll be taping that segment really very quickly, right?
Yeah, but there's a lot of self-help out there, and I think that's free, and people shouldn't. You don't have to go to a therapist for that.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to, and you don't have to take medication for that. So it's really something people can control.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about a couple of things. There are some things that people can't control.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to shift gears a little bit, and the first responders, the people on the front lines, people like you and your staff,
Mm-hmm.
like the county executive and our staff. How is it, or what recommendations might you have for those folks like us that need to continue going and facing it every day? We can't stop with the CNN twice a day or news briefings.
Yeah.
What do you say to those folks? Because the nurses, the doctors, like I said, the EMS, those people on the front lines who are there doing it to keep the rest of us safe.
Yeah. Well, I recognize that that's a critical question, and I guess I have two thoughts about it. One is that the answer, in one way, is no different than the answer for the average person. I think it just has to be escalated and increased. I come from a law enforcement family. We work a lot at the Department of Mental Health with first responders and law enforcement, and the healthcare workers in my department and the ones in the health department, and we know the people in the hospitals and the EMTs. I am amazed sometimes when I ask myself the question, where are they getting this drive and energy and commitment? And I think it gets back a little bit to the notion of the world's still a beautiful place. There are things about how we treat one another and how we interact with one another that is intrinsically rewarding. And when I asked just the other day a nurse that works for us, how are you doing this? She says, this is what I do.
Mm-hmm.
This is what gives me purpose. This is what gives me fulfillment. So, there's a healing quality to giving and to serving. I think we run the risk now, maybe this is at the heart of your question, we run the risk of pushing people to the end of their energy levels. And I think it's just as important as everything else we said, but even more so. Stay away from drugs and alcohol, get sleep, develop networks within your profession. And actually, I just heard the other day that there's a group of local people in the psychiatric hospital who are doing a community-based kind of support group for our ER docs, and just kind of grassroots effort.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that answers the question, but they need our help and our respect and our support as much as anyone, and they need to take care of themselves more than the rest of us.
Sure. What do you say to their family members who, see them putting themselves on the front line and heeding that call, and yet they themselves are at home worried about their loved one? How once again, how do you manage that? What is the messaging for that?
Well, you're starting to stump me now, Mary. The families, they deserve our thanks and our gratitude just as much. They're actually in a little different position, aren't they? Because at least the frontline workers are getting the gratification from doing the work, seeing the patient get better, moving on to the next person, the person at home waiting, hoping they'll come home well. I go back to some of the first recommendations. Those are the ones who need to stay very focused on keeping their immune system and their emotional well-being and balance. So I think the recommendations remain the same.
Remain the same.
Yeah.
Now, I am going to talk about some things that I have heard from folks. You know, they're in the house, kids are bouncing off the walls, and,
Yeah.
you know, whether we're going out, they're going out for a walk or doing something in the yard or whatever, there's only so much of that togetherness,
Yeah, isn't that amazing?
24/7, right? So, what might you suggest for
Right,
that? Because that
right.
creates, you know, different family dynamics already exist,
Yeah.
right? Now you put people 24/7 together.
Well, it's cutting both ways, I think, because there are families that are split apart because of social isolation and social distancing and quarantine. And there are families that are forced to be together. I think both can be quite stressful for folks. For the separations, and some of them are artificial separations that we wouldn't have chosen, this is where, and I said this morning, I've spoken much about how social media might be the bane of our existence, but it's the recipe for health these days. Staying in touch with
Staying
loved ones,
connected, yeah.
Staying connected. This is why social media, I think, has a value, because we might have to teach some of our older family members how to work it, or some of our younger ones. But there's just a wonderful way to stay connected. The cabin fever, kind of everyone in the same, that is a function, I think, of family dynamics, and it goes both ways. I've heard some great stories about people who hadn't had the time to spend with their loved ones, their children, their partners, and that this is really giving them an opportunity because they live such a fast-paced life they never would have had before. In the instances in which it's working the opposite way, that the stress is getting to people, this is where we're the adults, right? So creativity with our kids and trying to develop those routines and rituals in our house that keep people busy and keep people separate when necessary. Every family's going to be different, but I think recognizing that, again, these kinds of situations are the new normal. And maybe you need to talk to your friend and say, listen, I'm having a lot of problem with my family. What are you doing in your house? And
Sure.
talking about it. I don't know that there's a universal fix, but I've always said that we have to acknowledge, before this, I've always said we have to acknowledge how we're feeling, what our issues are. Who better to do that with than our loved ones? We have to figure out ways to live without. Isn't that crazy? We're asking this question.
Yeah, it is.
How do we figure out ways to live with our loved ones?
Well, I'm going to suggest again, the weather's getting better. Nothing better than getting a rake and going outside.
I second that, and walk together, walk alone, stagger the inside-outside time. You got to get creative, but it's the kids we're trying to deal with. We're the adults. We can figure things out.
One last group, we are talking about spending more time together, but for that group of seniors, those who are most vulnerable, it's difficult because there really is no visiting, right? With Matilda's Law, especially those over 70, there are restrictions put in place to protect our seniors, or to better protect our seniors, I should say. So what kinds of suggestions could you make? There may be some seniors out there who are not tech savvy.
Yes.
You may have neighbors. I'm gonna say, my mom made a call to her friend who is 90, and they're talking daily because she doesn't have any family in the area. What might you suggest in terms of making sure that our seniors are being helped, and through a time that can test them mentally as well?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I've thought about this a lot. That is really a group that, the county executive has talked about the aging population in this county and their needs for a long time, and this year he's actually asked me to work with him to look at the problem of loneliness and social isolation, and how we can kind of address that with the elderly. That was before this happened.
Right.
So we were in trouble. Well, this was a problem before this, and now it's, I think, even worse. Well, even if you're not tech savvy, you should be able to use the phone. And it's so important to reach out to your neighbors, I think, and to your loved ones who might be elderly and in need. I think, though, we know that there are people who are aging in this community who don't have a lot of family, and they're depending on the community and the supports of their neighbors and some of the services that our county runs. I would just say to folks, be very attentive to your block and your upstairs and downstairs neighbors, and how we treat one another in this time of crisis will define us. I'm convinced of that. And compassion and empathy and generosity are all going to pay back enormous dividends. And with the elderly, I think that's the answer to this. You know who on your block needs, even if it's a wave through the window. We know you're there.
Yeah.
We've seen great things on TV about communities in which they drive-by birthday parties and
the parades,
and
the drive-by
singing
parades,
across
yeah.
the balconies.
Mm-hmm.
That certainly goes a long way. And it's just unbelievable that we're even talking about this, because the world, as you said, has changed so dramatically in the last 3 weeks. But those kind of things go a long way, and they pay back dividends, I think.
And we are doing, I know we have the campaign Albany County Kids Care for e-cards
that's
and
great.
things. It's great, the things that are coming in for our seniors who are at Shaker Place.
We used to send those cards to our veterans overseas. Now we're sending them to Latham, to our own county residents. It's a great thing.
That's wonderful. Is there anything, before we give the emotional support line again, anything that we should be talking about, anything we didn't address that you think people should know?
Well, I always like to give a plug to the Department of Mental Health, and I would like to do that. We are serving in this time of crisis as many of the people who are our patients as possible. The number is almost near 1,000. Our clinic, our jail clinic, our case management services, our mobile crisis line, and I just respect so much the people that work for the county and the Department of Mental Health who continue to do that work. And so I wouldn't feel right if I didn't say that. But no, we should do more of these, and we'll try to get some helpful information out to the community.
Right. Well, we have our emotional support line 7 days a week, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. That number, and it should be showing on your screen, is 518-269-6634. We also have the emergency psychiatric helpline for those who do have psychiatric problems and do need that emergency help. That number is 518-549-6500. Dr. Giordano, I thank you on behalf of County Executive McCoy. He thanks you and your entire staff for what you're doing and how you're able to help those who really are now reaching out more than ever for help.
Thank you, Mary. It's always a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. And I want to make sure that everyone knows, remember, Albany County cares.